I am Ashley Lax. I'll be your facilitator today. I am going to go ahead and share my screen so we can run through just a couple of slides to orient you with what's going to go on today. I am joined by Megan from UCLA and John from the University of Florida. They're going to share some insight and expertise and help with any questions that you have, as well as the content sharing that's going to be going on today. In terms of community guidelines, we're encouraging everyone to participate, to be open to new ideas, creativity, etc. We're in unprecedented times, and so it's going to take a little bit different of approach for us to be successful as professionals. And so we'll have some conversations today about what that looks like. With that, we expect everyone to remain as professional and respectful of others as possible in this space. This should be a place where everyone wants to share and feel comfortable and put themselves out there, not necessarily where they feel they may be judged or criticized. And finally, we hope everyone gets something valuable out of this roundtable, whether it's the ability to share successes that you have going on, or you're able to snag an idea from someone else professionally. We hope this space is useful for you. What to expect: you all will be muted throughout the presentation, but you can use the chat function along the side, and I see several of you have already jumped into the chat function, which is great. We'll be utilizing that to get feedback from you all, questions, for you to share content that you have going on, so please orient yourself with the chat function. We'll also be periodically reviewing that chat to review questions, as well as to elaborate on some of the good ideas that you all have. If we see you had a great comment in the chat, we may call on you to elaborate on that. Just unmute yourself, introduce yourself, what university you're from, and then please elaborate more so that we can steal all of your wonderful ideas. This is being recorded and will be posted soon to NIRSA's Ideas in Motion website. If you weren't able to join us last week for the intramural virtual roundtable, last week's recording is posted along with the chat, so you can reference that there. There will be a lot of topics that we covered last week that we will not cover again this week, so we may reference that was already spoken about. You can check last week's recording and kind of get an idea of what was said. In terms of topics for today, we're going to touch a little bit more on eSports. There were some outstanding considerations that we didn't get to cover last week. There are a ton of eSports resources, so we won't dwell on that too much. Then we'll talk a little bit about what assessment looks like for you all. A resounding majority of you were still programming and expected to be programming as of last week's poll. And so trying to figure out how you're tracking numbers, how you are proving the success of the virtual programming that you're doing. Then we'll talk a little bit about what you're doing to occupy your time outside of that programming. Are you focusing on any projects long-term? Are you getting to things that have been on your to-do list forever, and kind of what do those look like? Then we'll touch on staff development, both for staff or for students and for professionals. What are you doing? What ideas do you have? What questions are you navigating through? Then we'll talk a little bit about future state. A lot of us have already started to consider how is this going to change the way that we offer intramural sports going forward. And then we'll talk a little bit about plan Bs. How many of us are planning multiple different variations of what we can offer so that we are staying ahead of the curve of this constantly changing landscape. In terms of upcoming resources, wanted to do a short plug for additional roundtable opportunities. There are tons on the Ideas in Motion webpage. Sport Clubs has broken off and done their own, as well as summer camps. Unified Sports, there are at least 2 different eSports roundtables. So a lot of opportunities for professionals to develop out there. The Championship Series is putting together a Series Talk Live presentation. This is normally given at the annual conference, but due to the cancellation, they will be facilitating it very much in this format. The registration, etc., will be posted soon, but wanted to put that date and time on your radars now. And then at the end of this, we will ask a question to all of you to get feedback on whether you think we need more intramural roundtables in the future. All of these have been set up based on interest and request by NIRSA professionals, so we'll do a little bit of info gathering to inform next steps. With that, we are going to jump right into topics of conversation. Megan is going to start us off with programming and a little bit of that eSports chat.
All right. Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. Megan Normansell here. My topic, like Ashley said, is continuing the conversation about eSports programming, because a lot of us are obviously already providing eSports programming, or going to even into the summer now. as we're all remote. So last week's roundtable focused a lot on esports programming logistics. This is kind of part 2 on a couple topics that we didn't quite get to last week. And the first one is streaming esports. So this was a topic brought up. Are you all streaming any esports, certain games, championship finals? I think it'd be sweet to have an esports champ night that you host live. So if you guys want to start filling in the chat, if you are already streaming, if you've thought about streaming, if you have your Twitch set up and ready to go, is anyone already doing that? Already streaming from Heather Marshall. Region 4 is setting up a regional tournament. That's awesome. Streaming, want to do champ night. Yes, Flick, a lot of us are aware of the trivia show. Trying to put it together. Cool, yeah. So I would say the first kind of idea is pick a date and try it out, get your students involved if possible. A lot of software and things that the kids are doing these days, it might be fun to get them involved and set it up for you, especially might be looking for extra hours right now. You just own the game that's being played. You have your open broadcasting software and your Twitch account, and then you can do all kinds of stuff streaming live. I know like a lot of us try to make our champ nights exciting at our own courts. Like we can, get our basketball arena and play there. So what other cool thing could we add to make esports fun? You can have live commentators, cool transitions, graphics on the screens, announcers, right? Trying to add value to the participant experience and put something together, especially if you have interested students who are able to do that kind of for you. No plans like offering a virtual leagues, can't call it esports, yeah.
Hey, Megan, real quick, while people are typing in those comments, could I ask a question based on that to Chad Endorf and Jamaica Cannon? Both of them referenced either a state tournament or a regional tournament. I would just be curious if there were a couple of brief thoughts from them on how that looked while we're waiting for other people to put in the little perks and other things they're looking to add.
Yeah, we just got our state leadership team just had a conference call today, so we're just working it out. We're going to do it through IM leagues. Our extramural committee has a little bit more of the details. I'm not sitting on the extramural committee right now. I'm just on the leadership team, so I don't have a ton of details, but I know that they're working on it, and the plan is to go live with registrations on Monday.
Hi, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Awesome. So the Region 4 esports tournament that I referenced, Cameron Milam from North Texas is actually spearheading it. And it's going to be set up very much like a regular regional tournament where it'll be April 24th through the 26th. They're going to have, I'm reading the rules real quick. It looks like 6 different brackets. So Madden, FIFA, NBA, and the Xbox PS4. And every intramural program can submit one person into each bracket. So it is more like a regional tournament, like the best of your best. I'm not sure if they're talking about streaming it, but that would actually be something pretty cool and probably something that I'll bring up to them that they may already be thinking about. But they're trying to make it as much like a regional tournament as, with all the basketball tournaments that got canceled and everything. And it sounds like it should be, pretty well run and legit if we can get it off the ground and get some kids interested for that specific weekend, which as usual would be the challenge.
That's awesome. Are you all charging for that, a team fee or entry fee?
No, at least so far not. I think the name of the game at this point, especially, is just engagement and, trying to still get students to interact with other universities, which is why what Flick and Drew are doing with the trivia game is really cool. So they're not talking about charging right now. Obviously, still have to have the game and everything else when you're running an esport.
We're not either. Kind of similar to what Flick's doing. We've had a couple schools. We'll be sending out T-shirts for the championship. Whoever's winning, similar, like I said, what Flick's doing for the trivia night.
Just a couple of things. So we're a poll really quick for everyone to provide some feedback. The poll question will be, are you charging for any of your virtual programming right now? All of us are offering it. There have been a lot of sentiments across the country of like, we're just looking for engagement, but wanting to get a little bit more official of a gauge from you all. So there should be a poll that is popped up right now on your screens. Go ahead and select yes or no and then submit. And then we'll be able to update you in a couple of moments real time as to what everyone in this room is doing for charging or not charging. And then we'll let you know. Perfect. So as we finalize that, were there any other things that you all wanted to include, to Megan's point about making the virtual experience just a little bit more special? Whether it's champ night or not, are there things that you're trying to do to play up the environment or experience for your virtual participants? Adding any of those other comments in there before we migrate to the next topic. Yeah, so for the most part, it looks like people in the comments section are not charging, but are looking for ways to incentivize with different prizes. Gift cards have been mentioned. Campus rec credits to purchase other things have been mentioned. Obviously, champ shirt, once we're able to give that away, we definitely want to give away to the winners. There was also one in here about utilizing Discord for daily sports debates to engage the participants. And then I've heard of mission control, but not familiar with how that plays out in terms of engaging participants, but another tool to utilize just to add something to the experience. Megan, do you want to hit on the next topic of participation and how we're potentially tracking and assessing some of these things?
Yeah, did the poll close? Is it?
I think Nick will close it. Nick, there we go.
Yeah, well, 98% of us are not charging, 3% are. That's crazy. So because of that, a lot of this quarter, we all know, is not going to be much revenue generating for us. So one thing possibly to help us in the future is to track now and assess now some of that virtual participation so that we can collect some data that may help us later when we need to request funding, prove our worth in front of other areas and programs on campus. If your program was able to say, you know, look, when other areas of campus were shut down, we had X amount of users, X percentage of engagement, you might be that much more successful in those initiatives later. So when it comes to that virtual programming, the live trivia stuff, the nationwide contests and such, other virtual contests, is anyone assessing that and how that they would like to share? Maybe Flick with some assessment advice can chime in. Put him on the spot.
Yeah, thanks. So last night, during the trivia contest, we had a Google Doc link that was going through the chat. So in order for individuals to be eligible for additional prizes, we asked them to fill out a short assessment. And it was basically just assessment in terms of where those individuals were from, whether they were students, staff, or faculty, and just what we were just doing, tracking how many individuals were participating and were basically what schools they were from. So we had 1,038 people participate. We had, I believe, almost 700, almost like somewhere between 724, 750 individuals use the sheet. So that's almost a 70%, if not more, 70% return rate, which is fantastic. So I would suggest that if you're going to do that, especially with a larger amount of individuals, if you have some type of prize tied with it, that's fantastic. You tend to get more people willing to do that. I would say also keep the assessment short as well. If you're going to have them fill out something that's going to take them longer than 2 to 3 minutes max, then they're not going to be willing to do it. So just keep it short. Be to the point with the questions you want to ask, and keep the answers or the medium in which the answers are going to be given short. So multiple choice, a yes or no, a simple write-in, things like that. So those are probably the best advice I could give you right now. Actually, if you look in the chat too, Drew has put in the link for the assessment in terms of responses from last night. So you can certainly click on that and take a look and see the different individuals that have signed up and where they're from. So I tried to do a soft count in terms of the amount of schools, just because we have individuals put in initials versus their full school. But we had over at least 150 schools participate in this.
Awesome. Thanks, Flick. Yeah, and especially I think of a lot of us too who are doing esports and virtual things might not have been all aboard the esports train before, but maybe we're singing a different tune now. So if we can assess the product now, brainstorm, put together something better this summer or fall, maybe that is something that we can charge for and have a great participant experience in future quarters and semesters, and connect with an audience of students who might not been previously engaged with our more athletic or traditional sports. I guess just to kind of wrap up, any other future programming ideas that you all are now thinking of for as we head into maybe look into the summer or even starting fall for virtual or esports? Any other kind of ideas that you're thinking of and that you're excited about?
I'm Verco from Springfield College. We're doing 2 new ones that will last over the next couple months, but we are going to do a sports movie bracket, and we put together a list of a bunch of movies, and then every week we're going to do the first round, and we're going to put it up on Instagram, let them vote on what all of our students and staff believe is the best movie, and that movie will move on through the bracket just like every other bracket. So we're going to push that out in 2 weeks. We're kind of trying to be strategic about when we're pushing things out and not too often, because we want to engage as many students instead of stretching them out or maybe losing them on some stuff. And then the other one we're doing that's pushing out tonight into tomorrow is a trick shot challenge. I can't figure out how to put it up here right now. Maybe Flick can help me with that. But it will be up on our SC Campus Recreation, hopefully tonight or tomorrow. And then we'll be challenging the students. We did bring our president into the loop, as well as the VP of Student Affairs, and they're going to judge over time. So we're going to run it for a 2-week span. The top 3 videos going to get the most likes on Instagram are going to be in the finals. And then we're going to have a student, our president, and a VP vote on the top 1. So that's kind of how we're doing that for now.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Last for me, just about esports, is that Geeks helped with an esports session on Monday, and that recording is available to view on the NIRSA Ideas in Motion page. And the esports task force is hosting another esports specific roundtable April 14th. So make sure to check that out too.
And Megan, real quick, one question / thought for me from an assessment standpoint is I feel like I'm in the minority of schools that did not offer esports programming prior to everything happening. So we're going to have an interesting conversation despite the success that we've seen in the limited time with registration. Is, are we having to assess for satisfaction, value, what the purpose is, or whether or not we need to keep doing what we're doing? You know, are we going to have to go back and prove to the powers that be outside of recreational sports that this is an endeavor that they should continue doing, or are they just going to see the numbers and say, yeah, obviously we're going to keep doing this. Now you have to incorporate it into your daily programming. So anybody who has done specific assessments that talk about questions about why you should do this, would love to see any of that, and I'll put my email address up in the chat as well if anybody has that information.
Awesome, great.
With that, I think we next want to transition over to staff engagement and what engaging our student staff looks like. Last week, we talked a lot about our supervisor staff and some of our admin staff in the office and how we're engaging them with meetings virtually, hangout sessions, playing games with them, doing movie nights, etc. A lot of you put a lot of really cool ideas in there. Today, we thought we would focus a little bit more on the officials development side. There was some talk last week about what you all are doing to engage officials. So we wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that area and get more of your ideas in terms of how you're engaging the officials. So we have another quick poll for you to do. We'll get that fired up right now. The question is your goal for engaging officials to stay connected, enhance development, or both? Go ahead and vote. Hopefully our percentages work out a little bit more correctly this time around. But that'll help gauge how we want to steer the conversation. All right, Broska, as the results roll in, do you want to get started on your thoughts for officials development?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Good to see faces that I don't get to see very often throughout the world of NIRSA and saying hi to people. So really appreciate it for that. It's been one of those things I've told my staff and they're stuck seeing me every day. So not being able to see them physically in person has been one of those things that in some ways you take for granted, and now is something that is definitely a lot more cherished. One of the things that I heard somebody say is everything that's happening right now is happening to us, but it could also be happening for us. And it gives us a lot of great opportunities to do things we haven't done before and to take a really good perspective on that. And one of those things to me is how we're engaging students through officials development. I know last week was about supervisors as well. Don't forget scorekeepers. There are a lot of people who have separate scorekeeper staffs and have to find creative ways to work with those teams as well. So curious if the poll is reflecting anything at this point. Do we have some good numbers so far? Okay, so probably, does it add up to 100? That's probably the first thing everybody's saying, and the answer is no, it doesn't. So another good math one there, but it seems to be right now from an overwhelming perspective, we're looking for the connectivity and enhanced development, but development is not the primary reason that we are engaging our officials at this point. So I would imagine we are not doing a whole lot of rules test, you make the call type things. So a good place to start would just be some of those ideas, whether or not people are trying to engage groups as a whole, whether they're just trying to do separate engagements with a subsection of your officials, basketball officials, volleyball officials, et cetera, et cetera. So ideas and things that you around the world are doing just to engage particular groups. So I can mention one that I know it's supervisor related, but Justin Griffin, our coordinator last week, set up Netflix watch parties with our supervisor staff, which could be done with honestly any level of staff through a Google Chrome extension, just as a way to get the conversations going and kind of, you know, do a poll on a favorite movie and kind of be together virtually watching movies. And so far has seen success with that. I know some areas are doing virtual tape breakdown, getting everybody together on a Zoom call, watching tape, breaking things down. The National Federation NFHS has opened up their trainings online right now, so that's another great resource. For the purpose of this conversation, we can steer away from the whether or not you can pay them for right now. So just looking for the ways to engage them, not worrying about the money part. So as we go through some of the comments, Crystal at Northern Arizona talking about completing the free courses and doing a short Google form quiz, you know, as a way to get them engaged and involved. Yeah, and I know the pay is going to be one of those things. So we'll continue to do that, you know, breaking down film, inviting in past employees, past student officials who maybe have gone on to work at the collegiate level, or maybe even high school supervisor, high school assigner, different things like that to maintain that engagement. Supervisors doing an all-staff trivia night is a great thing. Again, any of those things that you can do to connect with all of your teams at one point. So one comment down about all students wanting to know if they will get paid, and we had this comment earlier between Megan, Ashley, and I about that's going to change by every HR department, every campus rec department, and every state around the country. It's kind of amazing to me just here in Florida, we just got in the stay-at-home order more recently, and this is my second week working from home. There are some people who can still go into their office. There are still some people who are doing some programming on campus with an open facility, and there are some people that are completely shut down. So we are in such different phases of things right now that getting a universal answer on pay, I don't think we're going to see happening at this point. Flick mentioned about using Canvas for some engagement, online games, watch parties, which is great. That's already a resource that the students are familiar with, so you're not having to teach them something brand new. A lot of our students, they're just trying to figure out now how to be online students. So trying to make them learn something brand new is a little bit of a challenge there. So let's see, being able to send students to other departments, which is great to keep hours. Great reminder from Drew about uploading materials to the staff training hub on the Google Drive he created. And you can contact Drew if he has any comments on there. So any other thoughts from an officials development standpoint or a scorekeeping development standpoint, things that you're doing that we haven't referenced here? Okay, so one of the other comments that's in there, we can always hop back if somebody else has something else to pop in from an officials development standpoint. One of the things is talking about Zoom and this amazing tool that we all do 7 times a day for meetings, and now trying to figure out how do we now incorporate this into the future for us? Will you look to change the way you operate your officials trainings, requiring the in-person meetings or in-person captains meetings? You know, I operate in a sport program realm, so sport club leadership seminars, those types of things. So curious to get some thoughts from people who maybe have already been using Zoom or, you know, name the other format online where you can interact with people in a live setting. So if you have any of those things there that you would like to do, a monthly optional update meetings, Greg from Creighton, thanks for chiming in on that. And again, you could get into the question of whether or not you can pay people. For the purpose of this conversation, I would just suggest we leave that to each individual institution to kind of work through. Great points about, you know, can you hold your veterans clinics via Zoom. So maybe they don't have to come in and hear the same information that they hear about how to blow a whistle and different things like that. Let's see, what else is popping up in the chat here? Chat's a little bit empty with using Zoom or other of those online factors. I think this is an example of one of those things that we can now start incorporating more than we had in previous years. The check-in meetings, Microsoft Teams is another one. I'm actually taking off from a 3-hour seminar on Microsoft Teams, learning how to use that to be on this call here. So really interested to see, we're starting to get into that in our program. So excited to see what that's going to bring to the program. So I know we have a lot of schools that have done basic online trainings, and they could be recorded seminars for people to have to do as a method of even applying for the job in the first place. So maybe the path is to put the basics on video first, or have the people come in for basics, or do Zoom for basics, and then maybe have the veterans come in for more enhanced interactive conversation. So I think we've had some good feedback, some good thoughts. Megan, Ashley, anything that you have heard or seen or anything going on at your program? I know online sport club officer trainings, you know, anybody having other ones. If you have another program besides Zoom that you've been using, obviously feel free to write that into the chat. But Ashley, Megan, if you have any other thought that I'm missing.
I know there's been a couple of comments in there about Zoom with the multiple O's. We are members, we subscribe, we pay for Zoom. That's, I think, what it is. We pay for Zoom, and that software system, a lot of schools have dedicated a lot of resources to and have completely built out a lot of their trainings on there. You're able to use film real time to kind of freeze, point out positioning, build in questions, do some like reflection content, all of those different type of things. It also takes a lot of time on the front end for setup. So this may be a great opportunity for you to look into that as a program. It does cost, whereas other platforms that use video, YouTube, et cetera, do not charge anything. But there are a lot of schools out there that have really nailed how to utilize Zoom to facilitate officials training. And so I would encourage the schools to share amongst each other the Zoom with 3 O's. If you're doing it well, if other people are interested in that aspect. I think the WebEx versus Teams versus Zoom conversation is also very interesting. We as a university use WebEx, and then I prefer Teams, and because it's free, we have been utilizing that as well. I think WebEx has its limitations, whereas Zoom has a lot more functionality. The breakout rooms are really cool. The building in polls is an awesome thing, whereas WebEx doesn't necessarily have those functions until you get to the WebEx teaching realm. And so we're looking into if we get access to WebEx teaching or if it's only certain people, but that's how they're facilitating a lot of our professional development online on campus right now, is through the WebEx teaching portal. So that may be something to look into if you're a WebEx school and you hate the functionality of WebEx right now. There may be a way to like get the next best version, and that has a lot more of the functionality that Zoom has. Teams, again, free, connects a lot of different Microsoft platforms, so that's why I enjoy it. There are also a lot of tutorials online on how to utilize Teams most effectively. There are also a lot of schools that have been using Teams in a lot of aspects for a while now. I believe last summer, Penn State had already transitioned a lot of their program on the club and intramural side to Teams, and so they may be a resource to reach out to. But those are the things that I know and some of the experiences I've had with all of those technologies that people are mentioning in the chat right now. Canvas and some of these Basecamp, et cetera, some of the project management course type of things, people either have access to those on campus or they don't. Again, some front end time to build all of that, and then it works very much like a class. You all are putting in a lot of other very interesting suggestions that I've never had experience in, so I would connect with the professionals that are bringing those up if you do have specific questions about those platforms or softwares. I know now there's a fancy IT board on campus, so any new software that we want to introduce, we have to take through an IT board, etc. So everything that we currently have is what we're able to use unless we want to go through a really long, fun process. So that's what I would say about the tech piece.
And Lax, this is a great opportunity time for us to learn these new software programs and get ahead of the curve. I really found with all the information changing hour by hour, day by day, that I have spent a lot of my time looking backward and playing catch up as opposed to getting ahead of the curve and being prepared for what's going to come next and stuff, which I know we'll talk long-term planning in a bit, but this is the time that you're not worrying about inputting scores and things like that. Like, this is the time to learn Canvas, learn Teams, these things that our students have known for years that we haven't needed to use as much as they're using.
Totally agree. And taking some of that time myself to do a deeper dive into stuff I just haven't had the time to do yet. I encourage you to do the same. Our next transition of topics is to some HR and management related things. We have another quick poll that we'll see what we get in terms of results. And if we're again over the 100% realm, you all are very high achievers. The poll question: are you making multiple plans for programming to stay ahead of the changing environment? Broska just talked about day by day, almost minute by minute, we're getting different news, new news that changes timelines, the landscape of what we're able to do or what we want to do. So how many of you all are planning in a multiple capacity versus just like, we have this plan and if it doesn't work out, great. We have a couple of moments for those responses. And I think I'll take the over of your under flick. So in terms of long-term planning, as those results come in, for us, summer is our focus right now, as I assume a lot of you all will be shifting to. We have decided what we're going to program for the rest of spring, and we've rolled it out, and the students will either engage in it or they won't. We haven't had a lot of time to plan and put the firepower behind it that we normally do with our programs, and so we're kind of just seeing what we get, right? But this summer is an opportunity for us to engage in a more intentional way in rolling out some of these programs. And so we have a plan A for summer, which is everything goes great. We're able to open up campus before our summer term starts, and summer is like all the other normal summers. How likely that is, we're very realistic, which is why we created multiple other plans. We have a plan B, which is we're only able to program for a portion of summer based on when campus closes. We also have a plan B2, which is we only have a couple weeks to program at the very end of summer because campus opens up. And then we have a plan C, which is we are off campus for the entirety of summer as well. What does that look like for our programming? So we are rolling through all variations right now, and it's an opportunity for our coordinators to do some critical thinking and to plan ahead as well. And so not just to make it busy work and things that we're never going to utilize, but these plans may come into effect at any given point based on the changing landscape. So that's something that we have done as an approach here. In terms of other plans or other considerations that you all are doing, I would encourage you to start putting those in the chat right now. The chat results, 77% of you, yes, are making multiple plans for the summer. 23% of you are not making multiple plans for the summer. That is 100%. Congratulations, we did it on the third poll. For the 23% of you all that are not making multiple plans for the summer, I think a little bit of insight into, are you just, you don't program in the summer, so you aren't making any plans for summer, which is understandable, or are you not expected to do any multiple plans? You're just hoping your one plan kind of works as is. And a couple of you already mentioning, like, we don't operate in the summer. That makes total sense. With some of the planning ahead, some of the considerations, I just saw that I believe Travis put in here. One of the things that people need to start thinking through in terms of long-term planning, his question, is anyone getting pushback from the Office of Students with Disabilities about making sure your online programming is accessible to those students with disabilities, i.e. how do you accommodate those with visual disabilities and make them feel included? And so That's something when you talk about trying to make a plan A, B, and C, you have to consider the accessibility of those things. And so are there other barriers that people are experiencing or challenges that they're having to think through in order to create multiple plans for their programs? And reflecting on some of the comments here, a lot of you are looking to programming in a smaller scale, which I think is very creative. How much can we do one-on-one versus rolling out an entire team sport, so to speak? Let's see what else people are doing. A lot of people are moving to virtual classes. We just moved to virtual classes as well. We don't know if that means that campus is shut down for all of summer or they're just trying to be proactive with that planning. So again, us trying to stay on our toes and come up with as many plans as we possibly can. Remote learning still in place for a lot of you. We have no idea when we're going back either, Erin. I totally get you there. For us, a lot of what we're trying to consider with the long-term planning includes staffing. So we have a summer internship program that is a little up in the air right now as to if they can start, when they can start, what they'll be able to do. The same thing with our academic year internship program. Hopefully this does not go so long that it starts to impact our fall, but that's something we're starting to think about now as we figure out the summer plans. That's the next question, is what does fall look like? And is this going to impact anything that we do in fall? So we're already trying to figure out what it may look like for us to run in a more virtual capacity long-term. And I think Broska's question of how do you assess and what comes off and what stays on is going to be a really critical question for all of us. If we see a lot of success with virtual programming, does that maintain when students come back to campus? Is it because it's the only thing they have to do right now, and once they can come back to in-person, we don't get any more virtual interest? There are a lot of questions that we're trying to keep our finger on the pulse of so we can make the most educated decision for planning in fall and then going forward. In looking at some of the considerations that you all are making even into fall, smaller team sports, trying not to run some of the bigger, fall may not be the time to run 11v11 soccer. You may need to look to make that a 6v6 league instead, right? A lot of you all are talking about hiring freezes. That's impacting us significantly right now for a student and professional staff side. For our student staffing side, we start right now and looking to hire supervisors and our lead supervisor staff that help us in the office now for the fall semester. We're not able to do that. And so we're trying to think very critically about the timeline that we'll be able to create once that hiring freeze is done. And so if any of you all have creative ideas on how you're bridging the gap of I need staff in the fall, but I can't hire them right now, putting that in the chat would be really helpful as well, because many of us will be in that situation where we need to replace a large majority of graduating people or people that aren't returning, and we aren't able to do that in the ways that we used to. So how can we get creative in filling those gaps in the meantime, or revamping what our staff looks like in the fall to accommodate for lesser numbers, et cetera. A couple of you, someone mentioned Dunnigan cross-training students that will be returning so that you have them available for multiple sports or multiple positions. Crystal at NAU is doing phone interviews, and you do a lot of hiring in the fall semester. No, you do it before the fall semester starts, and you're doing the phone interviews to help supplement. I agree, Broska. Our returning officials are going to need to step up in different roles that they may not have served in before, whether it's carrying a larger load of training the staff or working more as that veteran, or we're now asking them to step into pseudo supervisor roles that we may not have just because we need that gap area. Question from Jamaica, is anyone looking at already accepting incoming freshmen interested in virtual IMs as a way to get them engaged in the weird times? That's a really good question, as a lot of the onboarding, the campus tours, et cetera, are going to online. All of our orientation for the summer has just been announced to go online. And so are there ways that we can engage those summer interested students, those early freshmen, et cetera, into the virtual programming that we already have, especially considering some of the risk factors that are normally in play may not come into play, right? Like we have a big issue with youth in our facilities before they turn 18. If this incoming first year student is not 18 yet, the virtual programming piece does not create that big of a concern. So looking into that as an avenue for new participation and engaging students earlier, as well as bridging that gap, I think is a really cool idea for people to look into. Someone is leaning on sport clubs to fill needs. I think that is also a really creative idea for those of us that have combined programs. We have harped a lot on how we want our club side to be more involved in our student roles, both officials and supervisors. And so this may be an opportunity to tap into that staff a little bit more. And then some of you, definitely other restrictions with how you're able to engage online based on if they're enrolled in classes yet, etc. Is anyone experiencing any significant staffing changes that are going to impact them long term? I know we talked about the hiring freeze. I know there have already been some mentions of furloughs in our state to some of the smaller schools. For the system schools, we feel pretty confident in the direction that they're going, but some of the schools that fall outside of the system in the more private or D3 area were not as lucky. And so that has been a part of the conversation. And in terms of timeline and how long this goes, there's definitely that concern in the background. So are there other staffing concerns or things that are impacting people's ability to long-term run their programs, be at full capacity? Dave Gaston's mentioned in the chat, they're planning to lose a lot of experienced people in all areas of student employment, lots of challenges with economy, and anticipating many students and families will be affected and may not return to the institution for financial reasons. That's definitely going to have a trickle-down effect on the other things that we do, right? And so not being blind to that fact or ignoring it, but being very cognizant and, again, trying to plan as far ahead as we can for what that impact looks like. A lot of you are in a position where you have to terminate student staff. I think that's also a tough thing. For those that may have to let go of your student staff, are there any guidelines by the university as to messaging or bringing them back or anything in the meantime to help with smoothing that message? Because that's a very difficult thing to have to deliver, but that's one of the realistic things that we're looking at right now based on financial situations, unknown timelines, etc. Let's see. Amanda Gray just recently accepted their newest GA, hasn't sent a contract yet because they're on hold with finances. Is anyone in the same boat? And how are you reassuring them in the meantime so you do not lose them? I think this is, again, a reoccurring theme for a lot of us that have to engage or recruit staff from year to year. This year, a huge wrench thrown into the system of what we do and how we're able to navigate that all together and then individually. For some of us trying to maintain contact with those candidates as much as possible, we've been in pretty constant communication with our summer interns as well as our academic year interns to keep them as up to date as possible. We don't want them to sign leases or commit to anything with such uncertainty, and so we want to be as clear and upfront as possible in that, while also still wanting to maintain them because we hopefully got the best candidates that we possibly could, right? So I think we're definitely in a position where we're trying to hold on to them without giving them this false hope that would impact their long-term financial success, professional development, etc. All right, I think with that, we'll transition to Broska and your last topic. And as we wrap up with our last topic, if there are any other things that you thought were going to be discussed, that you wanted to be discussed, that popped up while we were chatting that we may have missed in the comment section or something, if you all put that in the chat, we have a couple of minutes at the end to try and capture and speak to some of those topics. So I will turn it over to you, Broska.
Lax, I'm old enough to remember a time when if you put an intramural team into a league, you are also required to have one person from the team go to the rules clinics and be prepared to be on the schedule to have to officiate. And if they didn't have enough officials, we scheduled somebody from a team as an emergency ref. So if there's people that want to play sports, that they'll do anything to play sports, we may have to resort to such measures. But the good thing right now is it's not like a lot of the students can go somewhere else and find a job to supplement their income. And when they come back for the fall semester, if they're coming back, they're going to look for a place to work. So that's where that connectivity piece, I think, is really important for us, because they're going to remember us. They're going to remember that they've talked to us in recent weeks. They're going to remember how much they miss sports. We have an opportunity because we have something that is sorely missed in the country right now that they will get to be a part of the second we start having it be available to us. Dunnigan, if there's a way for us to mute Dunnigan and not allow him to make fun of my age, I would greatly appreciate that. If we can't do that, I understand, but you know, it is what it is. Anyway, the last part about paying students, we've talked a lot about in this case anyway. Also just keeping in mind our perspective and that these changes that can go long-term for us, some of them can be very advantageous for us. So this is more of a wrap-up reminder, help for each other, because we're all in this same boat together. There are extremely great things that can come out of what is happening if we choose to have the mindset that positives can come out of this. So, you know, 1,000 people showing up for a national trivia night, who would have even thought that was going to happen a month ago? Not even the idea of it, but that there would be 1,000 people. If you asked, you probably would not have guessed that number. So, you know, we work in a very structured environment. Intramurals has been around since the Stone Age, and you know, we tend to do a lot of things the same way because they work, and you get the teams show up and they keep showing up, and that's great. And this is something that's very different for every one of us. So we really get the chance to fundamentally change some of the things we do for the better without having the ties and restrictions of, well, I offer basketball every summer A, and I have X number of teams, so I guess I should keep offering it. Now you can't do that. So that's going to give you an opportunity to mess around, figure some things out, try some different things. And then using the resources on this chat, for example, and communicating with you know, your friends in NIRSA. Somebody else is going through the same thing. Somebody else has tried the same thing. Somebody else's idea is working, and we can get those ideas from each other as long as we keep those lines of communication open. So just, I think that's an important point for us as we're looking to see if any more of these items come in for questions and so forth. So again, I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody being on the call. Appreciate the opportunity to chat with Megan and Lax and all of you as well. So we'll look through and see if any of the other comments in here or questions are not directed at my age. Other than that, we're looking pretty good with questions. So, yeah.
I think a lot of the comments are referring to how people are trying to find meaningful work for their students right now, or what that looks like for them. So I think good ideas and a position that some of us are in based on like how they're charging, etc. A question that came up and I saw it and we didn't get to, and I think is really helpful. We asked, and not many of us are charging for the actual programming, but are any of you all charging forfeit fees for not showing up to or fulfilling your virtual programming? We have not talked about forfeit fees. And it looks like a lot of people in the chat have not either. The reason we decided not to do forfeit fees was for the like good faith effort of your entire semester was ruined. Here is some free programming and we're not going to charge you for not showing up. I think if we have to long-term, say our entire summer is also virtual programming, we may look a little bit more critically at whether we should incentivize showing up, right? That's what the default fee is incentivizing people to show. It's not covering our officials' fee. It's not doing that stuff. That's what we tell them, but it's not. It's to incentivize them to not show up. So if we get a lot of that now, I think that will be an adjustment that we make for our summer programming, but we have chosen to not charge any forfeit fees. And I think for the most part, that was a resounding no for most people. In wrap up, and again, if there are any other topics, please put them in there and we'll try to get to them quick hitter style. But in wrap up, I wanted to mention a couple of things. One, thank you all to those that participated in today's theme of Jersey Day. I have seen a lot of fantastic jerseys on here and want to shout out just a couple of them. Then again, I don't know what yours is. Some type of throwback hockey looking. Yeah, okay, Mighty Ducks. Fantastic. Nice job. I see a couple of really cool soccer jerseys. Jordan Hunter, Valentine. I don't know soccer. This is a Disney fake soccer jersey. I had to do that. I just had to. I saw, where are they at? Where are they at? I saw somebody on here with just the most fantastic jersey. I really appreciate the Tom Brady jersey. It's killing me inside. I decided not to wear mine today. Love the Gonzaga jersey. Also a really sweet Sharks. Is that Sharks? Yeah, that's definitely the Sharks jersey. And I also appreciate the referee jersey. Shout out to What We Do. I appreciate that representation, sir. Another thing I would like for you all to give some feedback on, we don't have any other planned virtual intramural roundtables. So wanting to get some feedback from you all, would you like to see any more intramural virtual roundtables coming up? If you do, just put yes in the chat. If we get enough positive feedback, we will try to set up another one. I just want to give a shout out to all of you. This, for the second time in a row, has been the largest attended virtual roundtable of any of the ones that NIRSA has put together. We as intramural folks, we show up, we show out for each other, and I really appreciate not only the support, but you all coming to provide ideas, share, help make each other better. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We will definitely be in contact in terms of communicating any future opportunities. Please continue to stay active on the community's boards to give more idea sharing, etc. And then please review this recording when it's live so that you can see all the resources, get any of the links, contact information that you missed through the chat this week. I appreciate all of your input. If there were any comments or topics that we didn't get to and we have more roundtables, that just supplies our topic schedule for next week. I want to give a special thank you to Broska and Megan for helping me facilitate this week. And again, thank you all for showing up. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your Thursday. Stay healthy, stay quarantined.